Back in 2019, me and my, now, husband were sitting in our tiny rented flat one Friday night, sipping cold beers and talking about the future. This was something we always did, scrolling through property sites, looking at houses we could never afford, sending each other links to dream cottages or fancy townhouses way out of our price range. I'd usually say, "That's it, that's the one," and he'd laugh and reply, "Perfect, I'll take two." That night felt no different, except it was. We'd been clicking through houses all across the UK when my husband, Daniel, leaned over and said, "You're going to love this one. Cozy cottage, middle of nowhere, wood stove, it's right up your street." "Say no more. Send it," I said, already grinning. The word cottage alone had me hooked. A notification pinged on my phone. I opened the link, and there it was, a small stone house covered in ivy, nestled into the countryside like it had been waiting for me. My heart actually skipped. This wasn't like the other times we'd played this game. Something about this house hit differently. It felt personal. I whispered, "Oh my God, that's the one." And this time I meant it. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "It's beautiful, yeah? But you've seen the price, right? There's no way we could swing that, not right now. Even if we saved for years, someone else would snatch it first." "I don't care," I told him. "We have to go see it." He chuckled. "We can't even afford the petrol to drive that far out. Never mind the deposit. Don't torture yourself." But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something deep in me insisted I had to step inside that house. I'd never felt that way about any property before. The next morning, I woke up to find Daniel already at his desk, the house listing still open on his computer screen. His face was serious. "I can't stop thinking about it either," he admitted. "I'm going to call the estate agent today. We'll book a viewing. Just don't get your hopes up, okay? It'll break your heart if this doesn't work out." But my hopes were already sky high. We booked the viewing for the following Saturday. The 5 days leading up to it felt endless, like waiting for Christmas as a kid. Every time the phone rang, I expected it to be the agent saying it had sold. But the call never came. Finally, the day arrived. We drove the 2 hours out into the countryside, talking nervously about money, life, and the ridiculous possibility that this could ever be real for us. "There it is," I gasped, spotting the for sale sign as we pulled up. The cottage looked exactly like the photos, better, even. The owners, a middle-aged couple, greeted us at the door and showed us inside. There are rare moments in life when words fail completely. This was one of them. The place was perfect. Rustic beams, low ceilings, a fireplace that seemed to breathe warmth. Daniel and I didn't even need to say anything. One glance at each other told me he felt it too. The owners were kind, but clearly distracted. They explained they were moving urgently and had only lived there a year. That struck me as strange. Who would want to leave a place like this so quickly? But I brushed it aside. Back in the car, we sat in silence. It was hopeless. We didn't have the money. We'd told ourselves not to get attached, but of course, we had. That night, we went through our finances obsessively, canceled subscriptions, talked about taking on more work. No matter how we twisted it, we were still at least £10,000 short. Defeated, we emailed the estate agent to thank them and let it go. Or at least, we tried to. The very next day, Daniel got a phone call. It was Sunday, unusual for work. I frowned as he stepped out to take it. When he came back, his face was pale. "What?" I demanded. "You won't believe this," he said slowly. "Somebody's just offered me a side job. Off the books. They're paying me 10 grand. I laughed. "You're joking. 10,000. For what?" He shook his head, dazed. "Doesn't matter. It's enough for the deposit." We just stared at each other, caught between excitement and unease. It was too perfect, too much of a coincidence. But we'd always lived by the saying, if it's meant to be, it will be. And apparently, it was meant to be. By Monday morning, we were on the phone to the estate agent, barely able to contain ourselves. We made an offer, braced for rejection, and by that afternoon it was accepted. Just like that, the cottage was ours. The next 4 months blurred together. Every spare penny went into savings. Daniel worked late nights, weekends, and odd jobs while I picked up as much overtime as I could. We were exhausted, but it didn't matter. We had something to aim for, our dream home. When moving day finally came, everything went absurdly smooth. Too smooth. Papers cleared quickly, no hiccups, no delays. Almost like the house itself was making sure we got inside. We told ourselves it was destiny. Settling in took a little time, but the cottage embraced us immediately. That's the only way I can describe it. There was this pull, like the house wanted us there. Friends joked that it had character, but to me it felt alive. At first, I loved it, until I didn't. Strange things began small. Misplaced items. My keys would vanish from the kitchen counter, only to show up days later in the bedside table. The TV remote wandered into the fridge. Once, Daniel's wallet disappeared completely, only to reappear neatly stacked with mail by the front door. I laughed it off, but inside, I was uneasy. "Babe, we're tired," Daniel would say. "We're working ourselves ragged. You probably moved it and forgot." And maybe he was right. But there was something in the way those things reappeared, too deliberate, too neat. One Friday night, we stayed up late watching films. Around 3 a.m., I woke needing the loo. The layout was simple. Out the bedroom door, stairs to the right, bathroom straight ahead, and a long hallway stretching left toward the spare room. We always kept that door closed. There was an old fireplace inside that let in a draft. But as I stepped into the hallway, I froze. The spare room door was open. My breath caught. In the darkness, I could just make out a figure in the far corner. A woman. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. My whole body locked, every hair on my arms standing on end. And then, before my eyes, the room changed. It wasn't our spare room anymore. The wardrobe we'd placed there was gone. Instead, an iron cot sat in the corner, and flames flickered in the fireplace that hadn't worked in years. The woman was dressed in white, Victorian style, her hair pinned up. She was crying, shoulders heaving as she leaned over the cot. And I realized with horror, there was a child inside. A still, lifeless child. My heart pounded. I tried to back away, but the floorboard creaked under my weight. The woman's head snapped toward me. Her eyes locked on mine. I bolted, screaming, slamming the bedroom door behind me. Daniel shot upright, panicked. "What? What is it?" I saw her," I gasped. "In the spare room. A woman. He didn't even let me finish. Half asleep, he marched into the hallway. "Wait," I begged, but he was already at the spare room door. Closed. He swung it open. The room was normal. Just ours. "There's nothing here," he said firmly. "You were dreaming. Come on, it's the middle of the night." But I knew. I knew what I saw. I lay awake till morning, the image of that grieving woman and the dead child burning in my mind. Who was she? Why was she in our house? And most of all, why did she see me? A year slipped by after that night. It was 2020, the world was collapsing into lockdowns, and Daniel and I were suddenly trapped in the cottage day and night. For the most part, things stayed calm. The odd missing item here, a shadow darting at the edge of my vision there. But nothing like what I'd seen that night. Sometimes I managed to convince myself it had been stress, exhaustion, maybe even sleep paralysis. Almost. Then came the second lockdown lift. Starved for air and space, we drove to North Wales, our favorite place in the world. Rolling hills, endless coastlines, tiny villages where time seemed to stand still. We joked for years that one day we'd move there. As we wandered through a village, we stopped at an estate agent's window. There it was, a derelict little cottage for sale. No heating, boarded-up windows, a fixer-upper if ever there was one. But the price, it was actually affordable. "Look at this," I said, pointing. Daniel whistled. "It's falling apart. But, I don't know. Something about it." "Fancy a project?" I teased. Before we could daydream further, our phones lit up with an emergency alert. The UK was going back into lockdown within 24 hours. We had to rush back, hearts heavy. Back home, something inside us shifted. Our perfect cottage suddenly felt cold, unwelcoming. The warm pull it once had was gone. Maybe it was just cabin fever, or maybe something deeper. Either way, we decided we'd sell. Within days, a for sale sign stood in the garden. And that's when everything changed. That same night, as we toasted with beers in the kitchen, I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. Watched. The feeling followed me into bed. Daniel fell asleep instantly, snoring softly beside me. I tossed and turned, restless. Then, against every instinct, I opened my eyes. She was there. The woman in white, standing over our bed. My chest seized. The outline of her Victorian dress was sharp, her mousy hair tied back in a severe bun. She wasn't crying this time. She was staring at Daniel. Her hand rose, slow, deliberate, reaching for his throat. "No," I screamed, sitting bolt upright. Her head snapped toward me, twisting unnaturally, her lips curling into a grotesque grin. I dove under the covers like a terrified child. Daniel jolted awake, confused, grabbing my arm. "What is it? What's wrong?" I was sobbing, gasping for words. Finally, I choked out, "She was here. Right here. She was going to kill you." He didn't laugh this time. He didn't dismiss it. He just held me, silently, as if he could feel the weight of my terror. For a week after, I barely slept. Every creak of the old house set my nerves on fire. I knew she was angry, knew she didn't want us to leave. And worse, I knew she wasn't finished. It only got worse from there. A few nights later, Daniel was downstairs on FaceTime with his mom when I slipped upstairs to the bathroom. The house was silent except for the faint murmur of their conversation below. As I washed my hands, that familiar sensation crept in, the suffocating awareness that I wasn't alone. That something waited for me. I opened the bathroom door and froze. She was there, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, blocking the landing, her figure half illuminated by the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Her face twisted, her eyes nothing but pits of black. She screamed. The sound was piercing, animalistic, as tears of thick, dark liquid ran down her cheeks. I bolted, heart hammering, forcing myself past her and down the stairs, screaming all the way into the kitchen. "She's here," I sobbed, at the top of the stairs. Daniel dropped the phone, his mom still on the line as he pulled me into his arms. It's okay, you're safe." But I knew I wasn't. Not in that house. That night we slept in the living room, trading off bathroom trips like children afraid of the dark. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both felt it. She was furious. Maybe because we were leaving. Maybe because the house wasn't ours to begin with. The weeks that followed were chaos. Buyers pulled out, offers fell through. Every step of the sale was sabotaged by delays, arguments, missing documents. It felt like the house itself was fighting us. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. It was our neighbor, holding an old leather-bound journal. She explained she'd been clearing her attic and found it. It had belonged to a woman who'd once lived in our cottage. Curious, I sat at the table that night and flipped through it. And there, staring back at me from a faded sketch, was her face. The woman. Beneath it, Jane Holloway, 1856. I turned the page, and my stomach dropped. June 16th, 1856. Today I laid my sweet child to rest. "Daniel," I shouted, my hands trembling. He came rushing in. When I showed him the page, even he was pale. Every detail I had described, the Victorian dress, the crying at the cot, the child, was written here, in her own words. I read on, piecing together Jane's life. Married young, widowed, remarried to a wealthy man. Eventually, she became something of a local figure in the Victorian era, mentioned in old university studies. And then I found the part that made my blood run cold. After living in our cottage, she moved with her husband to North Wales, to the exact same village where we had just put an offer on that derelict cottage. Was she following me? Was I following her? Or was I her, somehow, in another life? I slammed the journal shut, too shaken to read more. The next morning, I returned it to the neighbor, refusing to keep it in the house another second. After that, things calmed. The sale finally went through. We never saw her again. We moved into the wreck of a cottage in Wales, pouring our energy into renovations. It wasn't easy, but the place felt different. Safe. Protected. The first time in years, I felt like the house wanted us there. Until 2 weeks ago, Daniel and I went for a walk down to the old cemetery near the village. We wandered among the mossy stones, reading the names. And then we stopped. There it was, etched into a crumbling headstone. Jane Holloway, died 1868. And beneath it, the name of our new house. We just stood there, staring at the headstone. My skin crawled, every hair on my body standing on end. "Daniel," I whispered, my throat dry. "It's her. It's the same Jane." He didn't answer. He just put a hand on my back, like if he didn't, I might collapse right there in the graveyard. The headstone was cracked and weathered, but her name was unmistakable. And beneath it, chiseled into the stone, was the name of our new home. The very cottage we'd fled to for safety. It felt like ice water pouring down my spine. She hadn't just lived here. She had died here. For a long time, we didn't speak of it. We walked home in silence, each step heavier than the last. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of our half-renovated bedroom. The wind rattled through the broken windows. The beams creaked with age. But none of it felt comforting anymore. I kept thinking, what if it wasn't coincidence? What if we hadn't found this cottage? What if we had been brought here? Daniel tried to reassure me, told me it was all just history overlapping, random chance. But deep down, I could see it in his eyes. He didn't believe that either. Because the truth was, in both houses, we hadn't chosen them. They had chosen us. And Jane, she wasn't finished. I don't know if she wants to protect me, or warn me, or if she's trying to drag me into whatever tragedy tied her here in the first place. But every time I walk through these dark halls, or glance out the window into the endless fields, I feel it. The same pull as before. The house wants me here. And sometimes, late at night when the world is quiet, I swear I hear it. The soft, broken sound of a woman weeping in the corner of the room.